So today I wanted to talk about the best way to grow radishes, and really there is no best way. It really depends on the time of year. So right now we're in winter, so what's the best way to grow radishes in winter? Well, if you want to be eating them in winter, I think really the best way is to grow them inside under grow lights, and if you haven't got grow lights, don't grow them. So here we go. These are the radishes that I'm growing. These are 22 days old, and they have been under grow lights for most of their life, for about 2 weeks, so about 14 of those days, and then they've been outside in a little greenhouse, but you can see they're lovely now. They're ready for harvest. So 20 to 25 days, something like that. Now you can do multiple batches at the same time and then just stick them outside in the mini greenhouse like I do, and then basically they just chug away out there. They're winter hardy, they don't mind a few frosts on them, and so you can do multiple batches of them. So if you've got kind of spare grow light capacity early on in winter, just get them grown and then just store them in the compost. I don't have any holes in these, which makes it really easy to grow them inside. But of course, I don't have anywhere near enough space under my grow lights to grow radishes all year round like that. And so you've got to think, what's the next best way to do them? Well, the next best way is like this. And these are 9 days old, and I think they're looking pretty good. There, let's look at the end there. You can see they're multi-sown. So I've got, I think 3 or 4 seeds in each module cell. And I'll just show you how those are sown. This doesn't really need much explanation, but basically just make a quick hole in the compost with your finger and just drop them in and cover them over and lightly water them, and then just stick them somewhere warm in the house. Now I just tend to stick them under a radiator, in a cool bedroom, just anywhere basically out of the way where they're not going to get annoy anybody. Nobody's going to trip over them or anything like that. Nobody's going to see them probably. And they germinate nice and quickly. And here is an example of some that are 5 days old. So they have just germinated, and again these are under grow lights. At this time of year really they're much better under grow lights. You can start doing them without grow lights from about the middle of February, something like that, but right now, which is the middle of January, really grow lights are the way to go, and I do have just enough space under grow lights to sort of get them started. What I like to do is I do this bit of the tray of turnips and that bit of the tray of radishes, and that works out for me, and I do 2 trays each month, and that basically keeps up with demand. So at this time of year I think cherry bell or scarlet globe or something like that, little red ones, are the absolute perfect ones to be growing. But then you can branch out, you can go for all sorts of different ones, French breakfast radish and things like that. But they're a little bit better a bit later on in the season. So what you might choose to do, because they kind of mature at slightly different rates, is you might do maybe a third of your tray turnips, a third of your tray scarlet globes, so they'll mature quite quickly, and then a third of your tray French breakfast radish, so they'll mature like a week later. And then that gives you a kind of nice successional kind of harvest if you do 2 trays every month, if you eat a lot of radish like we do. So that's 2 ways. So what do I do with them once they're a little bit bigger than this? So right now these are not ready for planting. As I said, these are only 9 days old, and so I'm not going to plant those probably until they're about 21 days old, so they've got a bit of time yet. And at this time of year I would like to keep them growing under grow lights for as long as possible, so ideally, and in the warm, so ideally I'll get them like 14 days inside, and then about 7 days in the polytunnel to harden off a bit, and then I'll just dip some holes. I can use your finger or an old spade handle or something like that, anything that's basically the shape of one of those modules, Just dip a little hole in it and drop them in, firm the soil compost around them. And the nice thing about doing this approach is the speed. So at this time of year, if I were to sow radish seeds in the ground, they would probably take about 10 days to germinate rather than about 3 days to germinate, so that's 7 days. And they would grow really slowly at this time of year and got quite leggy, floppy plants and things like that. So not so healthy. They'd probably get some flea beetle damage on the leaves, which doesn't kill the plants but slows down growth and just makes them look less appealing. And by doing them in modules, you avoid all of these things. You know, they're growing nice and fast, they're nice healthy plants, they're stocky plants, and they're quick. And so it means when you actually plant them in the ground, you know you're only going to really be waiting for sort of 4 to 6 weeks at this time of year before they're ready for harvest. So something planted out in early February, we'll be eating those sometime sort of the middle of March, something like that. But you've got to plant them out at this time of year under cover, so either a low tunnel or a polytunnel, and best really interplanted if you can find space in between your other plants. I like to interplant them into, say, early brassica beds and things like that. There's loads of space in between the brassicas, so you can get loads and loads of radishes and turnips in there, and they don't really interfere with the brassicas like kales and things like that, cabbages and the like. These are out of the ground before there's any kind of competition going on. So you can keep on sowing in modules, I think, through early spring. Then you might consider starting them in the ground in sort of late spring, early summer. And I don't really do radishes in midsummer. I don't think they're that tasty. Bit spicy for me in midsummer, but then back in sort of August time, I'll start sowing them again to harvest them in the cool weather of September. And that first sowing in August, again, you can do them in the ground. Again, they're really quick in the ground. So if you've got the space, then that's still worth doing. But if you haven't got the space or you want to make maximum use of the space, it's still really good to do them in modules. And then by about, I think, sort of late December, really, late September, really, it's hard to get them to root up before they, lose quality, really. So I might do my last sowing sort of right at the end of September in modules. I'll plant them out in October, and so probably the middle towards the end of October, so about 21 days maybe after sowing. And then they're harvested in November, and that's about it, really. You can't really get them, I don't think, good quality, in my environment anyway, in December and January. And that's where these come in, just to say, start some of these trays so that they're ready in December and January. And as I say, these are only 22, I think I said, 22 days old and looking lovely. So that is my little guide to growing radish. Now, I've probably given you too much information here, but I've got an ebook, and in that ebook there's a chapter all about growing radishes, and it goes through all these kind of techniques, and it's got all the details. Just what to sow them in. Well, when you're sowing them in modules like this, I think just a low nutrient seed starting compost is best. When you've got low nutrients in the compost, the nice thing is that the plants go seeking nutrients, and so you get a nice good root system that holds together. So you don't want too much nutrient in your compost, and pretty much all proper seed sowing composts on low nutrient. And you can see there's plenty of nutrients in it because the plants look pretty healthy. When you're doing these and they're growing to maturity, then I just sprinkle a little bit of blood fish and bone into seed starting compost, or you can just use a multi-purpose compost if you've got some, and they do just great. The only thing to bear in mind is that radishes, they need lots of water so that they come out nice and crisp. And if you put a lot of water in a tray of seed starting compost like this, then there is a chance you'll get fungus gnats. Now, I have had fungus gnats this year, and so I speak from experience, and it took me about 2 weeks to get rid of them. And basically you get rid of them by making sure that the surface of the compost dries out. So, you know, you water them on day 1, by day 3 maybe the surface of the compost has dried out, you leave it for a day, you water them again on day 4, a couple of days, surface of the compost has dried out. And so long as there's kind of a day when the surface of the compost is dry, fungus gnats don't seem to thrive in that sort of circumstance, and it's worth just having some sticky sheets kind of around to spot any fungus gnats just starting to be a problem, and then you can kind of pay more attention to it. So check down below in the description of this video and you'll find a link to the ebook, and you'll also find a link to all of my growing guides and the whole of the ebook as well. So yeah, my name's Steve, this is the Seaside Kitchen Garden and Allotment channel, and I'll see you soon.